Let's turn a plain, boring window into an aesthetic masterpiece with this crochet flower curtain. So let's get started.
Hey guys, welcome to DIY Crafts.
For this I am using a 4-ply 100% cotton yarn and a 2.5 mm crochet hook. We are going to make flowers for the project. Begin with a magic circle as shown in the video. Make a loop on your hand. Now insert the needle into the center. Pull up a loop. Hold the loop on the hook. Adjust the circle by pulling the starting tail end. Now take the working end into your left hand and hold the circle. Chain 1 and let's start making the first row. That is the magic center. Now insert the crochet hook into the center. Grab the yarn and pull up a loop from the center. Now you will have 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over and make a single crochet. So this is the first single stitch. Now we are going to continue to make 10 single stitches in the center. This is the second single stitch. So insert the needle into the center, take the yarn and pull up a loop. Yarn over and complete the stitch. That's the third single stitch. And this one is the fourth single stitch. And continue, insert into the center, pull up a loop. Yarn over and complete the stitch. That's the fifth single stitch. Sixth one, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Once all 10 stitches are completed, pull the starting tail end to close the center tightly. So this is how the center looks like. You can pull it stronger to completely close the hole at the center. Now insert the hook onto the top of the first single stitch and then make a slip stitch. Yarn over and pull out the loop from all the loops on the hook. That's a slip stitch. Then this completes the first row of the flower. Make chain 1 and then cut the yarn by leaving a tail end of 2 to 3 inches. Now the loop on the hook, pull it out completely and make a knot. This forms the center of the flower. Now identify the stitch in which we have made this last slip stitch. Now insert the hook into that stitch. Now for the petals, let's attach another color yarn. Put the yarn on the hook and pull up a loop. Now hold the loop on the hook and then make chain 2. And now we are going to make 3 double crochet stitches in the next stitch. Begin with a yarn over. Hold the loops on the hook. Insert your needle into the next stitch into both front and back loops. Yarn over and drop a loop. Now you will have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull the yarn through first 2. Yarn over again and complete a double crochet. Let me show that to you again slowly. Yarn over. Insert the hook into the stitch. Take the yarn and come out of the stitch. Now you will have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over. Come out of the first 2 loops. Then you will have 2 more loops on the hook. Yarn over and complete a double stitch. So that's 2 double crochet stitches worked into the same stitch. Now we are going to make another double crochet into the same stitch. So yarn over and pull up a loop. You will have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, out through first 2 loops. Yarn over again and out through the next 2 loops. Now make chain 2. That's chain 1 and 2. Now let's make a slip stitch into the next stitch. So for that, insert the hook into the next stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop from the stitch and also from the loop on the hook. That is the slip stitch. Tighten it and this completes the first petal of the flower. Now let's continue the same pattern for the remaining 4 petals like we are making a 5 petal flower. So begin with a chain 2 again. And now in the next stitch we are going to make a 3 double crochet stitches. So begin with yarn over, insert and pull up a loop. Now you'll have 3 loops on the hook. Make the first double crochet. Again yarn over and into the same stitch. Insert your needle and make a second double stitch. Yarn over, into the same stitch, insert and pull up a loop and make a third double crochet. Now let's complete the petal by making a chain 2 and then slip stitch into the next stitch. So insert, yarn over and pull up a loop out of all the loops on the hook. This completes the second petal. And then chain 2, And we are making the third petal, yarn over and make 3 double crochet stitches in the next stitch. So that's first DC, second DC and third DC. Now make chain 2 and finish the petal by making a slip stitch into the next stitch. Likewise, continue the pattern for 2 more petals until you have total of 5 petals. So here I have done the 5th petal, like the chain 2 is completed. Now insert the hook onto the top of the slip stitch and make another slip stitch. Then make chain 1 and trim the excess thread by leaving a tail end of 2 to 3 inches. Now pull up a loop and fasten off. Make a knot. Now let's do the finishings for the project. Turn the flower to the back side where you can see all the tail ends. And now take the tapestry needle. Take the starting tail end, which is the center of the magic circle. Take that thread and put it into the tapestry needle. The thread which is from the center, we are going to secure it before weaving in the tail end. So first make a knot close to the center and then weave in the excess thread into the nearby stitches, like 2 to 3 stitches. And once the thread is nicely weaved in, you can trim the excess thread close to the project. Just make sure you weave in at least 3 to 4 stitches so that the starting tail end will be secured and safely weaved in. And then trim the excess thread. Now for the remaining threads, we are just directly going to weave in. We don't have to make another knot. So insert the needle into the nearby stitches. As this thread is little smaller, I have to do it like this. If not, you can just directly put the tail end into the tapestry needle and then weave in the excess thread. And after the threads are weaved in, we can trim the excess thread close to the project. Just like that, we are going to weave in these last 2 tail ends also into the project. And once it is done, trim these excess threads close to the project. And this completes the first daisy flower. This one is a smaller daisy flower. However, you can make a bigger daisy flowers also. The pattern I have already uploaded in my channel. Check the description for the link or click on the icon here. For this project, we need 100 such flowers using the same pattern. Try to use different color combinations to make it look colorful. Now let's start making the bell flowers. For this, I am taking the same 100% cotton yarn under 2.5 mm crochet hook. Now let's begin with a magic circle, just like how we have done for the flower. Make a circle and now from the center, pull up a loop. Hold the loop on the hook, adjust the starting thread and adjust the circle, make chain 1 and that's the magic center. Now in this center, I am going to make 5 single stitches. So insert and pull up a loop. Now you will have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and make a single stitch. And to identify the first stitch of the first row, I am going to use a stitch marker to mark this first stitch. Insert the stitch marker and lock it, and this gives the idea of where the first stitch is started, or the first stitch of the first row. Now this is the second single stitch. Always include the starting tail end while working in the center, like the magic center. That's the third single stitch. 4, 5. So that's 5 single crochet stitches. Pull the starting tail end to close the magic circle. You don't have to be too tight as we have to attach the strings on top of it. So it's just that it will close a little bit. Now let's start making the second row. Remove the stitch marker and insert the hook on top of the first stitch. And then let's start making the second row. Begin by making 1 single stitch, and now let's put a stitch marker on top of this to mark the beginning of the second row. And in second row we have to make single crochet increases in each and every stitch. So insert the needle into the same stitch again and make 1 more single stitch. So that makes a single crochet increase, that is 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch. And we have put a stitch marker in the first stitch. Now in the next stitch again we have to make a single crochet increase, that is 2 single stitches in the same stitch. So that's the second increase. So we have to make total of 5 increases we have already done 2 increases. This is the third increase. Every time increase means working 2 single stitches into the same stitch. This is the fourth single stitch increase. And then we have one more stitch remaining. In that, make the last single crochet increase, that is fifth single stitch increase. So by the end of the second row we will have 10 single stitches. In the next stitch you will see a stitch marker, that is when you know that you are following the pattern correctly. Now remove the stitch marker and in the next stitch make one single stitch and put a stitch marker in this new stitch, and this marks the beginning of the third row. And the first stitch we have made one single stitch and we put a stitch marker, and now in the next stitch we will make a single crochet increase. So for the third row we have to follow this pattern of one single stitch and one increase for 5 times. So this is the second repetition. We have already done one single stitch. This one is a single stitch increase. That's the second repetition, one stitch and increase. Repeat that throughout the row for 3 more times until you reach the starting point. Here I am making the last increase and this completes the third row with 15 single stitches. Remove the stitch marker and let's start making the fourth row. Begin with one single stitch and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the fourth row. Now for the fourth row the pattern is 2 single stitches and an increase. As we have already done one stitch, make another single stitch in the next stitch. That makes 2 single stitches. And now in the next stitch we have to make an increase. So in the pattern 2 single stitch refers to 2 separate single crochet stitches, one in each, whereas single crochet increase represents making 2 single stitches in the same stitch. So for the fourth row we have to repeat the pattern of 2 single stitch and increase throughout the row until you reach the starting point, and the repetitions will be total of 5 times, and by the end of the fourth row we will have 20 single crochet stitches and you will have a little dome kind of look by the end of the fourth row. Now let's start making the fifth row. Begin with one single stitch and then put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the fifth row, and now let's continue to make one single stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row. As we are not making any increases, the stitch count remains the same. That means in fourth row if we have 20 single stitches, in fifth row also we will have same 20 single stitches, and continue this pattern until row 9. So until row 9 each row will have 20 single stitches each. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 10. So insert the needle only into the front loops. Instead of putting the needle into the entire stitch, put the needle only into the front loop, and then let's follow the pattern. Begin with one single stitch, so that's one single stitch, and then put a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the 10th row. And now we are going to skip the next stitch, and in the later stitch we are making a shell stitch. Again only putting the needle in the front loop only. That is how the front loop. Insert and drop a loop, and now let's make a double crochet. We have to make 5 double crochet stitches all into the same stitch. Again yarn over, put the needle into the same stitch, drop a loop, and you will have 3 loops on the hook, and then make a second double crochet. So that's a second DC. Yarn over, and from the same stitch make another double stitch. That's the third DC. That's the fourth one and fifth one. So whenever we work 5 double crochet stitches into the same stitch, it is called as a shell stitch. Now skip the next stitch, and in the later stitch we will make a single crochet. So here one single stitch and one shell stitch makes one petal. So we will have a total of 5 petals if we follow the same pattern. So one single stitch is completed, and now in the later stitch make one shell stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now skip the next stitch, and in the later stitch start making the third petal. Begin with one single stitch, and all the stitches are worked only into the front loops. Now continue this pattern throughout the row until the starting point, and total you'll have 5 petals at the bottom of the bell flower. So that's the end of the 5th petal. 5 daisies in the last stitch, and skip the next one, and there you will see the stitch marker. Take out that stitch marker. Now on the top of the first stitch, insert your hook into the entire stitch, then make a slip stitch. Yarn over and bring the yarn out of all the loops on the hook. Chain 1 and then trim the excess thread, leaving a tail end of 2 to 3 inches. Then fasten off and make a knot. This is the bell flower. Now we have to weave in the end. So the starting tail end, which is at the middle of the magic ring, we will leave that one. Only the thread that is at the finishing part, we are going to take the tail end into the tapestry needle and weave in into couple of stitches until the tail end is nicely weaved in and secured, and the thread should not be seen from the front part. And then trim the excess thread close to the project. And for this project we need a total of 17 bell flowers. You can use different colors for this project. Now let's start making the strap for the project. For this I have taken the light green color, again the cotton yarn, 4-ply 100% cotton with a 2.5 mm crochet hook. You can change the yarn if needed, or you can use the same material. And now let's start making the foundation chain. This chain for the project which I have done is approximately 32 to 34 inches. However, you can adjust the length depending upon your requirement. So make a long foundation chain according to your requirement. Count really doesn't matter. Now let's start making the first row. Skip 3 chains from the hook, and into the 4th chain we are going to make a double crochet. So yarn over, insert and drop a loop, and then make a first daisy. Again into the next chain we are going to make another double crochet. So yarn over, insert and drop a loop, and then make a second double stitch in the next chain. Likewise, continue to make 1 double crochet in each and every chain throughout the row until you reach the starting chain. So here, as how long the chain is, how many stitches you will have those many double crochet stitches in your first row. Don't leave any chain. At the same time, don't make any increases. That is, don't make more than 1 double stitch in each chain. So that way you'll have a solid first line, and this gives the little stiffness to the project. Now from row 2 till row 4 or row 5, we are going to do a mesh pattern. So for that we'll begin with chain 3, which acts as a height chain. Now skip the next stitch, and in the later stitch make a double crochet. So the chain which we have skipped, or the stitch which we have skipped, will give a gap or a square kind of look at this first place. Now we are going to repeat this pattern. Make chain 1, skip the next stitch, and in the later stitch make 1 daisy. Again chain 1, so that is the mesh pattern. Again chain 1, skip the next stitch, and in the later stitch make 1 double stitch. That is another gap. Again chain 1, skip the next stitch, and in the later stitch make 1 daisy. This is how we create a mesh pattern for the project. Again chain 1, skip the next stitch, and in the later stitch make 1 daisy. And we are going to repeat this pattern throughout the row until the starting point of the finishing last stitch. So here I am making the last chain 1, skip the last one, and into the 3rd chain of the previous row make a last double stitch, and this completes the 2nd row. Now let's start making the 3rd row, and in the 3rd row I am going to make a same mesh pattern. So begin with chain 3, turn your work from the front to the back side, and now skip the chain 1 gap, and on the top of the previous daisy insert your hook and make 1 daisy. That gives the first square of the 3rd row. Again chain 1, skip the next chain 1 gap and make 1 daisy on top of the previous daisy. That's the 2nd square, and if you see, the squares are aligned one above the other. Again chain 1, and in the next daisy make 1 daisy, again chain 1, skip the next chain, and in the later daisy make 1 daisy, again chain 1 and 1 daisy on top of the previous daisy, and you are going to repeat this pattern throughout the row until the last stitch. Now we are going to repeat the row 2 pattern in row 3 and coming up until row 6 or until the required width is reached. So here I am making the last mesh stitch, like the last daisy on top of the last chain 2 in the 6th row, and this completes 5 rows of mesh stitch, and including the starting row we'll have a total of 6 rows. Now let's start making the 7th row. Here I am planning to have a solid line at the first line and the last line as well. So that's the reason I'm making one more row of a solid DC. So for that, chain 3 and turn your work. And now make 1 DC in the chain 1 gap and 1 DC on top of a previous DC, so that you will get a solid DC line for the 7th row. So 1 DC in chain 1 gap and 1 DC on top of the previous DC. Again 1 DC in chain 1 gap and 1 DC on top of the previous DC. And continue this pattern throughout the row until the last stitch, so that you will have a solid line just like the first row. We'll have the last row as a border for this one. Now continue this until the last stitch. So after making the last double crochet stitch on top of the previous chain 2, we can make chain 1 and then trim the excess thread. And if you see, there is one solid line on the last row. Chain 1 and trim the excess thread. Now pull the loop out of it to make a final knot. This completes the strap of the project. Now lay it flat and let's start working on the strings of this project. For that, fold it in half as shown in the video, and this helps us to identify the center part for the curtain. Now you can take the base as a first row or the 7th row, any row will be fine. Here I am taking the 7th row. Now once you identified the middle stitch, open the folding and insert your hook in that center stitch. So we are going to make a center string for this one. Now put the yarn on the crochet hook and pull up a loop. Observe the stitches carefully. So for the string, we are going to include the starting tail end along with the string so that we don't have to weave in all those ends again. So wrap the starting tail end around the crochet hook as shown in the video. So you'll have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and make a chain. Again, wrap the yarn around the hook and make 1 more chain. So that's second chain, and we are going to repeat this pattern until all the starting tail end is included along with the foundation chain. And you put a count on this foundation chain, and you can adjust this chain according to your requirement. In my project, I have made a count of 16, which means for every 16 chains, we will get either a leaf or a flower. So that is how I have planned all the stitches. So here, if you see, the foundation chain is, the starting tail end is almost completed. So once it is completed, we can just continue making the foundation chain as usual. So we have weaved in the starting tail end along with the foundation chain. Here the first 16 stitches are completed, and that is where I have to attach a flower to this. And then I am going to make another 16 chains. That is where I have to work the leaf for the string. So total we will have a 32 chains. That's 32 chains, and now I'm going to make 6 additional chains for leaf. That's 4, 5 and 6. So these 6 chains will make a leaf. So for that, go back and insert your crochet hook into the 7th chain and make a slip stitch. So that is a leaf. So first 16 chains, and then we have to attach a flower there, so that we have made a total of 32 chains straight away. And now I'm going to make another 32 chains. That's the another 32 foundation chains, continuity, like a continuous count, and then make a second leaf. And this number of stitches, the number of flowers or the number of leaves for each string again depends upon your requirement. For me, the first string or the middle string, which is the shortest one, I have planned to get 4 flowers and 4 leaves. So again, that's 32 plus 6 chains. Now go back and put your needle into the foundation chain, into the 7th chain, and then make a slip stitch, and that gives you the second leaf. And again 32 chains, 4, 5, and likewise see 32 chains, and that is the last leaf. And I have done the 16 chains, and this is where I have to attach the bell flower. So once all the 4 sets of 32 stitches are completed, the last leaf is done, and then I have made 16 chains, and here is where the end of the string. So if you observe, 32 chains, first leaf, 32 chains, second leaf, third leaf, and fourth leaf. So once 4 leaves are done, which means I have left the place for 4 flowers as well. Now I am taking the bell flower, turn it inside out so that you can see the starting tail end. Now insert your crochet hook into the magic center of the bell flower. Now take this finishing thread from the string and attach it into the center and pull the finishing tail end out of the bell flower. Now connect these 2 threads by making a couple of knots, and make sure the knots are really tight so that it doesn't come apart. After making a couple of stitches, trim the threads, leaving small tail ends intact. You don't have to weave in them, as the bell flower itself covers up the tail ends. Now again make it correct side, and this completes the first string with 4 flowers and 4 leaves. Now to identify the spaces in between the next strings, what I have done is one end of the strap, fold it so that you will have a middle point. Now put a stitch marker in that place. Again we'll have the folded part, right? So again fold it in another half. That is where you can have another 2 more points which are at equal places. So fold it again and identify the middle parts where you can identify the chains, and that is where you will put another 2 stitch markers separately. So take a stitch marker and identify the stitch and mark that particular stitches. So here counting doesn't really matter, only the measurement makes the sense. So make sure you fold it nicely and identify the center part clearly. And now open up all the folded parts. Now if you see, you can identify the middle part in between these 2 marked stitches. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So these are the 8 parts where we have to add the strings on right side, and on the same way we have to add the 8 points on the left side as well. So that is how you identify all the points of making the strings for this project. Now after completing the strings, we will attach the flowers. Coming to the length of the strings, if you are planning to have all the strings of equal length, then no issues. But if you are planning to gradually increase the length of the string, then you can add a certain amount of chains for each and every string. So in my project, the center string is 144 chains. The next one will be 160, 176, 192, and likewise the last 8th chain from the center will have 288 chains, and in the same way we'll continue to make the strings on the left side also. Now I am attaching flowers at every 16th chain after the leaves. So I'm going to use a hot glue gun to this. If you want, you can use a B7000 jewelry glue or a fabric glue for this one. Allow it to dry, and with that your crochet flower curtain is ready to decorate your home. I hope you all enjoyed watching this tutorial. Do give this pattern a try and let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Written pattern is given in the description. Do check it out. Don't forget to share your work to me on Instagram. See you all in the next video.
Thank you for watching. Please like the video, share it and subscribe to DIY Crafts.